Southern Fried True Crime covers cases that are not suitable for young listeners, and there may also be some explicit language used. Listener discretion is advised. 2 years ago, I released episodes 127 and 128, a two-part series on the Belinda Temple case. As with many of my multi-parter episodes, I had not originally planned for it to be more than one episode. But the case has so many twists and turns that there was no way to do it justice in one episode. Since then, there have been some more twists. One in particular is that a main witness for the prosecution, Belinda's best friend, Tammy Harlan, was involved in a hit and run that cost a young man on a bicycle his life. An anonymous tipster called in naming Tammy as the one who killed the 19-year-old victim, David Grotberg, and said that she was under the influence at the time. When Tammy was brought in for questioning, she admitted to drinking some wine that night and said she thought she had hit a stop sign. After a full investigation, Tammy was indicted in June 2020 for failing to stop and render aid, but more importantly, for manslaughter. As with David Temple's resentencing hearing, Tammy's trial was on hold for the pandemic. Her latest continuance was granted in April 2003, but hopefully she will stand trial soon for the death of David Grotberg. David Temple's hearing was also held in April of 2003, but luckily, Tammy's alleged crimes had no bearing on the testimony. Welcome to episode 191, Update on David Temple. If you haven't already, I do recommend you listen to both episodes that I just re-released. But for now, let me give you a summary as a refresher. On January 11th, 1999, 30-year-old Belinda Temple from Katy, Texas, was at home while her husband David took their 3-year-old son Evan out to run errands. Belinda was just 3 weeks away from giving birth to their second child and first daughter, who they had planned on naming Erin Ashley. Belinda was a caring and devoted mother who was also passionate about her role as a special education teacher at Katy High School. When 30-year-old David arrived home with Evan around 5:30 that afternoon, he found the glass to their back door window was smashed in. Immediately suspecting a robbery, but not knowing whether Belinda was okay, David ran across the road to alert a neighbor. The men returned and entered the property after David put the family dog, which was aggressive to strangers, in the garage. Upstairs, inside the closet of the main bedroom, lay Belinda's body. She had been shot in the back of the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. Both she and her unborn baby girl died instantly. Police focused on David as their suspect. However, there was no physical or forensic evidence linking him to the murder. But if it was a robbery, as he had suggested, why hadn't anything been stolen? The couple's jewelry and Belinda's purse, which all would have been in plain view of the intruder, remained untouched. Dresser drawers were pulled out, but not ransacked, and a TV had just been laid over on its side. Also, the murder weapon couldn't be located, and David had no trace of blood or brain matter on him, as would have been expected if he was the killer. But there was circumstantial evidence that told a story. All had not been well in the couple's marriage. Belinda's friends and family considered David a critical and unsupportive husband. Belinda's twin sister, Brenda, found him to be particularly cruel to his pregnant wife, calling her fat and not getting her gifts for her birthday or Christmas. Belinda's close friends supported Brenda's story. And at the time of Belinda's death, David had also been having an affair with his coworker, Heather Scott, who taught at Alif Hastings High School where David was a football coach. Though obviously, just because someone is unfaithful doesn't mean they're a murderer. Over the next 18 months, which would turn into years, Belinda's shattered family and friends wondered whether her killer would ever be held accountable. Meanwhile, David was getting on with his life. In 2001, he and Heather married. Finally, in late 2004, David was arrested for Belinda's murder, and after much legal wrangling, he was indicted the following year. In late 2007, David was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife. The prosecution successfully argued his affair with Heather was the catalyst, and that David shot Belinda before staging a burglary. Due to Texas laws in place at the time, David could not be prosecuted for the murder of his unborn daughter. He was sentenced to life in prison. But in 2016, after serving just 9 years, David's conviction was overturned. A retrial was ordered, and he was released on bond. This was due to the prosecution's original failure to provide all evidence to the defense in relation to a student and neighbor of Belinda's named Riley Joe Sanders. The defense wanted to present Sanders as an alternate suspect, especially since he was said to have a grudge against Belinda. Under what is known as the Brady Rule, prosecutors are required to disclose to the defense any potentially exculpatory material relating to the accused. The material said to have been withheld by Harris County DA Kelly Siegler related to claims heavily implicating Sanders, which were much later discredited. Sanders had been ruled out as a suspect by the team of investigators on Belinda's case, and Siegler technically followed the Texas rule of law at the time. But her behavior at her hearing was hostile, and she was admonished by the court, and David was granted a new trial. However, he was again found guilty at his second trial in 2019. By then, his wife Heather had divorced him. The prosecution again sought a life sentence. But during the punishment phase, the jury became deadlocked. As a result, the judge declared a mistrial, and a new jury would need to decide David's fate. This was due to go ahead in March 2020, but the pandemic meant the new date for the sentencing kept being pushed back. David appealed the mistrial ruling, requesting an entirely new trial with a new jury. In November 2021, the 14th Court of Appeals denied his submission, and David remained in the Harris County Jail on a $1 million bond. According to KPRC2 News, his team was intent on appealing to the Court of Criminal Appeals. This, of course, meant further delays. Finally, on April 10, 2023, 54-year-old David's sentencing hearing began at the Harris County Courthouse. By now, a new prosecution team consisted of special prosecutors Lisa Tanner and Bill Turner from the Texas Attorney General's office. They were assigned following David's conviction being overturned, and the conflict of interest saw the Harris County DA's office recuse itself from the case. Lisa Tanner's opening question to the new jury about David Temple was pretty simple, saying, "He has been found guilty, so whether he did it has been resolved. Now what are you going to do about it?" The prosecution made sure to lay out how David killed Belinda and staged a burglary, pointing out that it would have been near impossible for an intruder to gain entry with the family's aggressive dog on guard. Their argument as to motive was David's relationship with Heather. The defense maintained that the issue of David's guilt wasn't the slam dunk the prosecution wanted the jury to think it was. His attorney, Stanley Schexnayder, told the jury the defense fully intended to explore some of the police investigation. Many of the same witnesses who had previously given evidence at David's past proceedings were in attendance, and again, they gave accounts consistent with their previous testimony. According to the Houston Chronicle, David's ex-wife Heather nervously told the court she had trouble remembering some of the key dates around their relationship before Belinda died. She did concur that when David was supposedly on a New Year's hunting trip in 1998, he was actually staying with her. She also testified that while she helped raise Evan, who called her mom, she and David never once talked about Belinda's death in all their 18 years of marriage. But she did believe David was a loving and dedicated father who took Evan to visit Belinda's grave. Nothing in Heather's testimony disparaged her ex-husband. She agreed with the prosecution that she told David they needed to end their affair, but then in the days leading up to Belinda's murder, both Heather and David declared their love for each other. David's sister-in-law, Rebecca Temple, testified for the defense, telling the court that David was an amazing father who had worked hard over the years to reconnect with his son. While Rebecca initially wanted nothing to do with David following Belinda's death, according to the Houston Chronicle, she now stated his marriage to Heather changed him for the better, testifying, I saw a man that was softer and very caring and considerate. A key part of the defense strategy appealing for leniency was David's apparent commitment to God, which he had developed since first being incarcerated. Ex-felons and even retired Texas Department of Criminal Justice chaplain David Nichols spoke to David's devotion to his Christian faith, as well as his ministry during his time in prison. David's 28-year-old son Evan was consistent in his testimony. He spoke about having no recollection of what happened on the day in question, let alone any memory of his mother at all. The court heard how Evan felt abandoned as a child by Belinda's family. This conflicted with her family's evidence, notably that they had to obtain a court order to even see Evan. He testified how traumatized he felt when his father was first sent to prison, saying, "I remember crying a lot, hugging my mom Heather, and not knowing what was going to come next or what life was going to look like without Dad there. I want my dad out of prison. I lost my dad once. I don't want to lose him again." Evan maintained his father did not kill his mother, though the court was directed to regard this not as fact, but simply his opinion. In closing, David's lawyer asked the jury one question, focusing on Evan's well-being, asking, "What is the future of David Temple? As you think about his future, you have to think about Evan. Punishing David is also going to punish Evan." On April 21st, 2023, after 2 hours of deliberation, David Temple was once again sentenced to life in prison plus a $10,000 fine. He showed no emotion as the sentence was read. It was a bittersweet moment for Belinda's family. Her mother, Carol, had passed away in 2015, a year before David's conviction was overturned, so she hadn't had to experience the turmoil of the second trial. Fighting back tears, Belinda's twin sister Brenda and brother Brian delivered emotional impact statements. Brenda's frustration was palpable as she read, "Belinda was my life. It has been hell for me for the last 24 years. I have suffered from PTSD. I have felt survivor guilt. I will never understand why you killed Belinda. David, you could have gotten divorced. You not only took Belinda away from me, you took away my niece I never got to meet and watch grow up." Brian told his brother-in-law, "You're a despicable piece of trash. You call our family white trash? Look at you, David. You completely ruined our family. You ruined your family. No one else deprived Evan. No one else killed Belinda. That was your decision. I want you to think about that for the rest of your life in prison and rot in hell." The murder weapon used to kill Belinda Temple still has not been found almost 25 years later. The time David had served while awaiting sentencing was deducted from his total sentence. He will be eligible for parole in 2040 when he will be 72 years old. But the defense isn't deterred and plans to appeal, which should surprise no one, given how strongly David maintains his innocence. Personally, I think David Temple is exactly where he belongs. If you listen to the original episodes on this case, I go into great detail supporting my belief. But I also play devil's advocate and illustrate the holes in the case against David. I still believe he meticulously planned his wife's murder, giving himself time to not only kill her, but also clean up and get rid of the murder weapon, while still managing to give himself a shaky alibi. And Riley Joe Sanders was thoroughly investigated and cleared, but also common sense will tell you he and his friends did not have the wherewithal to execute Belinda Temple without leaving any evidence behind. They were teenage potheads, not cold-blooded killers with a motive to kill Belinda. It was clear from the pristine crime scene that Belinda's murder had been carefully planned. David was the only person to have a real motive to kill his pregnant wife, and he almost got away with it. Southern Fried True Crime is hosted and produced by me, Erica Kelley. Today's episode was researched and written by Gemma Harris, with additional writing by me. As usual, any editorial comments and opinions are my own. Southern Fried's original music is by Rob Harrison of Gamma Radio, and the original graphic art is by Coley Horner. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Brandon Schexnayder of Southern Gothic and Erica Kelley. If you have any case suggestions, please go to my website and click on the Listener Suggestion tab or email sftcresearch@gmail.com. Please remember that I do not accept suggestions on social media private messages. The research tab on southernfriedtruecrime.com is the best way for me to get those little-known cases y'all always send me. But please come join our Facebook group, Southern Fried True Crime Fans Discussion Group, where we swap recipes, worship Dolly Parton, and share memes. I much prefer spending my social media time in our lovely group. Our group is a safe and fun corner of Facebook, and by God, we mean it when we say no shit asses allowed. It's not just a motto, it's how we run the group. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, and please tell a friend or rate and review on iTunes. I'm also on all large platforms like iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and YouTube. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Y'all take care.